Yeah. Are you adjusting? You're doing some structural alignment? I don't know. He's deviated. He's a deviant. Wait a minute. She's a deviant. Actually, it's a homomorphic structure. Okay. So the overarching picture of what is on offer this afternoon is that you will be doing exploring with each other, with one person lying on the roller and the other person working with them. That's a follow-on from the lesson that you just did. And I don't want to eat up that time, because I hope you both have a shot at it within that time period before we start to see the class FIs. So if we can aim for a 45-minute play each, that would be really ace. So, but at the same time, I never try to push anything. Hey, Lucky. Yeah. So a very simple point, and I'm sorry for its ridiculousness, but it's a point that needs to be made nevertheless. Skeletons do not stand. Do you understand that? Huh? That's smart. No, that was dumb. It's so dumb it doesn't even have a head. Do you understand that it doesn't matter how much you try to find the balance point in this structure, its nature is it won't stay there. It can't stay there. You could wrap it around in resin maybe, you know, pour resin over the top, it would stay there. But you see, what I'm feeling for is what you were feeling for the other day when you were moving your partner. What's the least amount of work that I can feel? And I'm feeling for that balance point where it's like I'm right now, I'm not doing anything. When I find that balance point, see, a moment of suspension. Can you see that? There's a moment of suspension. How do I know? Because the skeleton is not pushing into my skin hardly at all. There's no pushing in my skin. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. Now, nevertheless, even though there's that moment of suspension, after the suspension comes the fall. Is that a story about relationships? I don't know. Definitely some people say something, I know, I've never experienced that. May it be so for the rest of your life. Huh? It's inherently unstable. Every surface in the skeleton is a curved surface. And excuse the language, but the only reason it stays upright for the time it does is because of these cords that are linking it together. If those cords weren't there, it'd fall even quicker. Now, I'm reaching the end of what I want to say. The other day when I had those circles up on the board, I said, we have to include fascia, because the muscles do not directly attach to bones, and they don't. Around the whole of your skeleton is this continuous bodysuit or bone suit of connective tissue called the periosteum. In some places, it thickens up and differentiates and it becomes a joint capsule. In other places, it differentiates and it becomes a ligament. In other places, it differentiates and becomes a tendon. But at no time does muscle tissue actually connect to bone. It can't. Muscle tissue itself tears too easily. It couldn't withstand the forces. But for those of you who've ever tried to, you know, that sticky stuff on meat, when you try to cook the meat, unless you cut the fascia, the meat bunches up. Yeah, that's how tough it is. It will withstand, I can't remember the exact number, but it's certainly over 500 kilograms before it pops. Matter of fact, it will pull off bone before it tears. Now, if your whole skeleton is wrapped in this bone suit, I like to call it a bone suit, because having been a spearfisherman myself, I know what it's like to wear a wetsuit and walk around going boing like this. Yeah, and that fascia, that bone suit, has a tension in it. Fascia has a tension. So your skeleton will crumple, and then it'll encounter the tension of the fascia. So it's not just going to fall off each other like, you know, when you were children and you played with blocks and you just knocked off the blocks are not connected. They just fall off each other. But because you've got a bone suit, the bones don't fall off each other. Now, this is the completion of the idea. That's why I said sag. When I sag, I'm hanging off connective tissue, if you like. Yes, there's still muscle work going on. But here, if I sag like this, these huge ligaments at the front of my hip joint, I'm hanging off them, literally. It's like work. It's not even work. There's no metabolic energy. I've reduced the amount of work that I do because of the inert tissue. So actually, this is more efficient. If you're looking at metabolic energy, this is more efficient. You hang off ligaments, you don't have to expend energy. This takes more work. So when we say we're looking for the most efficient, it's always in that context. Yeah? Not hanging off something, but having your musculature just letting you hover. And you saw what something looks like when it's hovering, right? Yeah? So this is it. This is the finale. When something is hovering, it stays there momentarily, and then it falls off. If you catch yourself falling off sooner than that, it doesn't take much energy to bring you back. Yeah? Oop, no. Oop, no. No. Oop, no. That's what your nervous system is doing with your musculature in response to the sensory feedback all the time over every joint. And one of your major sensory organs, it ain't your bones. You've got no sensory receptors in your bones. Your bones feel nothing. They're starting to think maybe some of the cartilage has some sensory organs. They're starting to dissect that a little bit. But these guys, you're not getting any feedback. Which means we've been fed a lie. This is the first Mythbuster, the Feldenkrais Mythbuster. I'll give you a complete show maybe on Friday. There's a lot of myths in this method that we become skeleton conscious. No, we don't. We become skeleton conscious by implication from other tissue. It's implied. There's no direct consciousness of the skeleton. It's all implied by a fascia, muscle. End of story. Yes, it's like, yeah, I'm going to say it because it sounds cute. It's conceptually hollow. Yeah? It's like you're finding the hollows around which the fascia wraps. And then it's an inference from there. Yeah. But this is the point, that you're continuously losing, regaining, losing, regaining. And yes, we all have our favorite directions. This is what they've done from, oh, look at that. That was a long one. Yeah. We all have our favorite directions of postural sway. They've done these analyses. Some people will continuously visit this quadrant. Some people will go, some people will go, some people will go. We have a postural sway signature, which is fascinating. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. I'd like to see someone do a research project, postural sway signature before and after a lesson. Would it be different? Especially after that lesson, lunch. Yeah. 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 Now, we're going. I wanted to introduce it this way because we'll be going to do work on a roller. And just to let you know how Zoran mind works, your mind doesn't have to work like this, thank God. But this is how Joanne was saying to me, Zoran, you've got to give him a chance. You are so esoteric. I said, no, I'm not esoteric. She said, yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yeah. So this is how Zoran's mind works. So you can see I've placed a solid object on a roller. Can I have the white one? Because that's the most solid. Yeah. So I've placed a solid object on this roller. Now, because it's a relatively solid object and it has hardly any bendability in it, it's got the foam, the balance point is really precise. Even so, the roller itself is not a stable surface. So if I'm here and I don't, and this roller isn't quite it, here we go, that's it. Yeah? Yeah? It's solid. It can't redistribute its mass. You are solid, but you're articulated. And so you can redistribute your mass to stay on the roller. Yeah. So this object here in biomechanics speak, this has 1 degree of freedom, no degrees of freedom. It's actually got a couple of joints in it, but they're folded. It's got no degrees of freedom. It's just solid. You have over 400 degrees of freedom. We have a mathematician in the room. Where'd she go? 400 degrees of freedom. What does that add up to? More stars than the universe of possibilities? What's a permutation if you made a permutation of 400 possibilities? Yeah. A lot. Okay. How many zeros would you put after it? 10 to the power of, have a guess. Almost infinite. But you're pretty astronomical. Yeah. 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 So the other thing that this table won't do, I'll just support it a little bit. The other table, the other thing that this table won't do, it won't respond to commands because I haven't learned that trick yet. Right-hand corner, go towards the ceiling. Telekinesis. Lift, power of my mind, lift. Doesn't work. However, you respond to invitations to do things. I can certainly move the roller, yeah? But the roller has no, I'm sorry, I can certainly move the table, but the table has no consciousness. No, don't go there, don't go there, don't go there. Yeah, it doesn't have any consciousness, but it's a physical object. It responds to a push and a pull like every other physical object. You too are a physical object. You are composed of matter with some consciousness sprinkled in. Yeah? You too move like any other physical object in this universe. If you get pushed, you will move, unless you resist. And we know resistance is futile. Now, let's replace this very uninteresting object with a person. Could someone lie on the roller, please? Someone with far more degrees of freedom than 0. Lucky, hey, a real person. Yeah, head on, please. Let's have a collision. Sorry. Now, you can see on that diagram I have emphasized the 4 corners. What are the 4 corners in our minds for this particular experiment, play session, whatever you want to call it? The 2 shoulders and the 2 hip joints, or the front of the ilia. But the hip joints is better because you've got at least the ball. Now, here are the rules of the game. First rule. Lockie, your task, and it's a soft task, is to stay on the roller without trying hard. So should at any time you feel the need to roll off the roller because it's too hard, just roll off the roller. Let yourself fall off. However, when you feel yourself disturbed, try to regain your balance on the roller as easily as possible. That lets you keep breathing. So did you hear? They're the rules of the game. Because you can turn into like just, if Lockie stopped working, eventually he'd fall off that way or that way. Just like you did. Yeah. Now, Lockie's head is positioned on the roller in a certain way. Not interested. I'm interested in what will change by the end. That's what I'm interested in. You did that lesson. His weight is not falling off left or right. He's positioned his legs in a nice stable way. We're ready to play. So that's the first rule of the game. Next one is this. Lucky, take your right shoulder forward and come back. Just do that a few times. And notice which way do you get displaced on the roller. See, you can see. Yeah. Rocky, stop. Take your right shoulder backwards. So you can see now a regularity appearing. There's something about this side that every time Lockie takes this side forwards or backwards, can you feel, Lockie, how your weight gets displaced to that side? Yeah. And now you're kicking in the pelvis. The top half goes that way. Now the pelvis is going the other way. Counterbalance. This we have all learned. When you had that nappy between your legs and you had that wide stance and you were running down the corridor teetering and your parents were going, oh my God, they're going to fall. You didn't. You maintained your balance. That wasn't a conscious thing, by the way. You didn't say, I'm going to teeter down here and I'm going to keep. You just ran to wherever your little leggies were taking you because you had momentum and you somehow had to resolve it. Yeah. So now, Lockie, take the right hip forward. That's it. And a few times. Now, I know that Lockie has, like myself, a human structure. I know he's articulated. through many, many vertebrae through his spine. I know his ribs are articulated. I know his hip joints are articulated, his knee joints. He has a lot of degrees of freedom, and somehow he's controlling those at a subconscious level to maintain himself on the roller. Maybe some of it's conscious. I hardly have to do anything. I'm just perturbing him. At the moment, I'm perturbing him with my words. Could you take the right hip backwards, please, Lucky? Now, you might think that language is this, oh, that's interesting. He hasn't done that before. Did you see? Was that something that you wanted to do? It just happened. Okay, yeah. So language does perturb us because I utter something, sound waves go, they strike your eardrum then goes, which then moves bones, then go, which then actually stimulate the various nerve endings in your cochlea. That is as much a physical perturbation as, come back to the middle, I pause, I let Lockie know where I am. I move him in a very graded way so that he can respond rather than trying to do an Aikido throw or something with him, right? Mind you, he could respond to that too. But you see, so contact, here I am. I form my intention. We're going to go forward. Ah, that's interesting. He responds differently when I move him. Maybe it's the way I hold. Or maybe, so can you hear how many maybes there are here? Or maybe I give him more time to sense what he's doing than he gives himself. So that's the game. First of all, try out verbally directing your student into these possibilities. Forward or backward. If you want to then set up some simple combinations like Lucky, can you take your right shoulder forward and your right hip forward? There, see how he side bend? Because that's his option. He has to take weight that way to stay on the roller. So he side bends. I didn't tell him to side bend. That's what's, I get excited by that. Yeah, that's exciting. That's called self-organizing system. Now, Lucky, right shoulder forward, left hip forward. That's that's a counter turn. That is, depending on which of the two is the larger movement, will either, if they're equally as large, he'll stay balanced. If one is larger than the other, the weight will go off to one side. Now, Lockie knows his job to stay balanced. So he's making choices to stay balanced. Now, Lockie, take the left hip backwards and the left shoulder backwards. Left hip and left shoulder backwards. Left hip and left shoulder. Don't be tricky. Yeah, left hip, the other left hip. Yeah, that's it. Now roll completely off the roller. Go ahead. That's it. Great. Yeah. All right. So rules of the game, the person on the roller is not a sack of potatoes, and they're not fighting with you, and they're not fighting with the roller in desperation trying to stay on the roller. There's leeway. If you feel you're going to fall off, fall off. You can always climb back on board. It's not a long distance. Yeah. But at the same time, you are trying to find your way how to stay on this roller. You as the teacher perturb your student. I'm using those words intention. You're going, oh yes, it's a great opportunity. It really is. Perturb your students first with your words. This is partially the answer to yesterday. How can you do less? You can let this scenario do the whole work for you. You can just stand back and go, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that. And by the end of the lesson, the person will feel like you felt at the end of the ATM. As long as it's relatively safe. So this is the next one, the untold story. So this is how I'm going to wrap it up. If you choose to do this lesson on the table, that's quite a distance from the table to the floor, and believe it or not, depending on the risk taker, internal attitude of your client, they'll go with it. But if they are in any, oh, shit, no, I can do this. I can do this. You see, already, if they're thinking I can do this, they're going to be in a completely different state, and they can try to override it consciously, but they know that there's a fall to the right and there's a fall to the left. Just like yesterday, when I was looking at you, somewhere with your backs right to the edge of the table, I was going, that was my state. Now, if you know that you are okay with that, really, really, like deep down in your guts, work on a table. Otherwise, work on the floor. And even then, how high a roller? Because some rollers have a big diameter. That's quite a fall. And before hip operation, believe me, I would not get on a big roller. I'd get on a little one like that. Not even something like this. Yeah, so can you see? And then, for some people, this is so terrifying that you just want to hold the end of the roller a little bit. Like you've got a bike over there with brakes, the little pads. You just put a brake on the roller, or if you don't want to do that, you use a roller that's a bit more gushy rather than, oh, well, you can use a half roller, yes, so it has that stability, and there's just the curve. Or these are good because they deform. You lie on them and they flatten. So that's far more easy to do than that. But if you've only got that, then you put this on a soft surface and then the surface dips. So you can see how you can structure the environment to what you sense is the attitude of the person and the history that they're coming from and what they're asking for. Just in these couple of little variables. All right? So now let's see. Yeah, we've got half an hour. Just pair up and play. We'll see how we go.